Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
It
must be November.
unbelievable.
Yeah, it
Here
feels
we
like
are.
November.
In fact, it's early November. So bless you if you are even watching this. We've all got here in this country, we've got a lot on our minds.
Oh, boy.
And it probably doesn't need to be there, but there it is. So
So it seems like an especially appropriate time, we thought, to talk about a topic we love anyway, and that's community.
yeah, let's lead off by saying we don't tend to do overt politics. I mean, I suppose, we learned in the 70s that the personal is political, so everything can be political.
That's good memory.
But that's, that's not our explicit, well, I don't know, we want to support the climate with every political decision we make. So, but related to that is this urging from us to each of you to please vote. This is just
Yeah.
so important.
It truly
and
is.
and vote your heart. We would like it very much if you voted for the climate, and we may say some other things about that. Vote for kindness, for community, the
Yeah.
well-being of community, and each of us sees that differently. But and then the other thing that I'll say before I see what you have to say is just keep your values and go to what seems right. This is what I think trees do. This is what the water behind us does. This is what the clouds are doing. They just are in deep integrity with what they are. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting with trees, it's not again that they're thinking, okay, what would be the best thing for me to do to support community? It's just that the default is just to support community.
Right.
They're linked into the mycelium networks under the ground, and we've talked a lot about that, as have many other people. And through that network, if there's a young sapling struggling, they're able to send water, they're able to send carbon, they're able to send phosphorus and nitrogen and support that little tree.
Yeah.
They're able to make other members across species aware that there's a threat from insect or other kinds of infections. So the idea is to keep the ecosystem intact, because it's with the ecosystem or the community intact that the greatest opportunity for life for each individual manifests itself.
Yeah, life doesn't happen if we don't cooperate, collaborate, be our natural genius in community.
Yeah, and one thing, since you mentioned trees, I'm off and running since I'm writing about trees so much
Right.
lately, but it's wonderful how a forest has all of these niches that are of course occupied by various organisms and creatures who make the most of them, and there are some niches that sort of change over time, and then there are these, even with trees, vertical niches. So at the top of the tree you'll have woodpeckers. Next layer, mid tree level, you'll have warblers, and then lower on the low branches you'll have chickadees, and then on the ground you'll have robins. And everybody's sort of taking up residence, or at least a lot of their lives spent in their sections where they've been able to find what they most want and need to keep going. So a single
Right.
tree is able to support this entire neighborhood just in birds.
Yeah, and this is the way that we really are. I mean, listen to these comments, think your own thoughts about community and how it thrives and how the natural world shows us how to be in community with deep integrity. And it's not about being vigilant and minding our manners. I mean, it's just natural manners, like you're saying about the trees.
Yeah.
But listen to those things, pay attention to those things, and take that sensibility to the polls, to your voting. Yes, but this is like a huge moment
It is.
for human community, and it's just our country, so it's not the entire globe on the one hand. On the other hand, we are learning from each other about how to stand with integrity and with our true nature.
Yeah, and I think it's an opportunity whenever there's a potential upheaval, or this is real upheaval, just the anxiety and the tension before this happens. It's not that something bad has happened, but it is a kind of upheaval, and in the face of that, it's really, I think, important to invigorate your community and decide who you want your community to be, the kind of people who are going to be of a nature of being able to not only live good lives on their own, but strengthen each other as well, much like we were talking about in the forest. And yeah, don't maybe waste your time with somebody who's going to make you feel less certain about yourself or less good about yourself. It's a great time, especially in this time of stress, to have people who really are there and holding you up and you holding them.
Yes, and at the same time, we do know, for example, with the resilience of an ecosystem, that the ecosystems that have the most diversity are the most resilient.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I was suggesting earlier, this is not about giving up where you stand morally. It is about digging deep and seeing what the roots of that are. And where I get to and where you get to may be different places, and we may vote differently, but that's the important step, is to really dig down and what is there at the bedrock of our moral reasoning, of our understanding of who we are and why we are and what we are.
Yeah, we're really, I think, so much more dependent on each other and certainly on other life, all of life really on the planet. There's such interdependence. We've just begun in science to scratch the surface. And of course, people over thousands of years have developed their philosophies and their ethics and the way they live and their religions based on the fact of that. And we're getting a chance now to re-examine it. I mean, in the world of nature, you know, when I was writing so much about wolves, well, the wolves are really cool, and everybody loves to go watch the wolves in Yellowstone. But the wolves are very dependent on the elk, and the elk are very dependent on the grass.
Yes.
And the grass is very dependent on the microorganisms in the soil that create nutrients that they can access, and on it goes. So, again, we say this ad nauseum, but this isn't a world that supports rugged individuals. It just doesn't. In fact, there aren't any. And so, given that, how can we move forward calling on our own strengths while at the same time making those strengths available to other people and then leaning on their strengths to the extent we can as well? It's okay. It's okay to need each other.
Yes, it is. And one of the things that happens, given our deep socialization that Gary and I have talked about a lot, and that the Full Ecology book really addresses, into believing we're separate from each other and separate from the natural world, one of the kind of deeply socialized impulses when we're in stressful times in our community is to pop into the reaction of, I want to control this.
Oh, yeah.
I want to control something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another empirical investigation for all of us. Because there's very little that we can control.
Yeah.
And it's really important for you not to believe us. But one suggestion that seems right to me is like the only thing that we have any control over is where we place our attention. We don't, but we can step aside and understand that we don't have control by through our mentation. We can't just think, we can't wrestle circumstances and conditions to the ground with our thinking. But we pretend like we can, and it makes us all pretty crazy. And so that's a thing to watch. We can't control how other people will vote. We can't control how the candidates will behave. We can't control so many things. But we can keep showing up with the deepest integrity that we have. Integrity to our truest nature. We can do that. And so it's an odd and very challenging time psychologically and socially because of how deeply we have received the message that we are separate from each other and separate from this. You know, it sure looks like it. I'm not out in that water, swimming around in it to survive. I'm here on solid ground, speaking to a camera and all of you, with Gary, who seems to be
inhaling
separate.
water molecules from the river,
Probably,
and so they're becoming us
yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, you talked about control, and that's one of the things that's always been fascinating to me about certain groups in the wilderness, say outward bound classes or wilderness therapy programs for at-risk teens, good ones, compassionate ones. They really, in that wild setting, have a lot of success, and they give credit to the wildness, not to their human teaching skills, to sort of suss out very quickly what you have control over and what you don't. And then to maybe ultimately think it through to what is there in your life you have control over and what you don't. I mean, you really don't have control over the weather. If it's going to rain or hail or snow at night, you do have control over whether or not you're prepared, whether you've put up a tent and whether you've done what you need to do to stay warm and dry during such an event. But there's something about being out on the trail and grumbling, I wish it wouldn't rain, or I wish it was hotter, or I wish it was colder, that just somehow in that setting just seems ridiculous. And so I think it's really good to see how ridiculous some of that impulse for control is in a setting that can reinforce that, the whole idea of control is sort of ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and then some people elect never to go outside.
True.
So that they can avoid weather, for example.
Yeah.
But there are other things they can't avoid.
Right.
One of the things we know for certain, and this causes no end of a psychological challenge, is that the moment each of us was born, the only guarantee was that we would die. And that's pretty direct. That's pretty harsh. Or it's an invitation to be fully in what we have right now. But that takes some thinking, that takes some pondering, that takes some quiet to be able to even get to that kind of understanding. But there it is, a bald-faced fact, the moment that we are born and the moment that comes into awareness, we hop into this socialized impulse to try to control that, to try to diminish our aging, to try to guarantee and control. And there's nothing wrong with staying healthy, with exercising, with eating well. All of those things are really, really fine because that makes us happier and more available to the time that we have.
Yeah, I think in some ways, and you've said this many times, if you can get to the acceptance of something that you don't have control over, your line, which I know you've taken from a very old text, is how do you know it's perfect? Because that's what's happening.
Yeah.
I think at the point of acceptance, that doesn't disempower you. In fact, it gives you the calm center from which you then may want to take certain actions and decide to go down a certain path based on that. I mean, if you think of that kind of present moment awareness, it's everywhere in nature. If a tree is facing a certain weather condition, it's not trying to argue against it or even brace against it. But as that situation comes on, then the tree will, or the plant will have some kind, or the animal have some sort of response that's appropriate. But it's really responding to what actually is, not what might happen next week, or being bummed out about what happened a month ago when this same thing happened. It's really quite a present moment way to live, and that's at the heart of thriving, I think.
Yes, and do consider that. And the person who I first heard speak those words, how do you know it's perfect? ? Because it's happening, is Byron Katie, who is a spiritual leader. And you all can check her out if you'd like, and maybe many of you are familiar with her. But it is a tough thing to consider.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know it's perfect? Because it's happening. Oh, this means we accept so much that is really, really not okay with us. Really not okay. And so what does that mean in terms of this deep integrity that we're talking about? What does that mean in terms of community? Well, I'll speak for myself. The invitation is immediately into how can I be locally in a way that ripples out, whether I can see the ripples or not, globally. Because this is so. What we do makes a difference to everybody and everything. And you check that, really, as we often say, do not believe us. Check it out for yourself. But back to the trees. It's not like the trees are thinking, oh, this is going to have global impact. But we know it does. We know that when the Amazon is burning in by huge amounts, we know that has an impact.
Big.
We know that the carbon sequestration is diminished by that. And we know that any blade of grass that has deeper roots is going to be able to sequester carbon. So we do what we can. We plant trees. We think globally, we act locally, which is that old environmental slogan, and is very much based in community.
Yeah, and I think if, to the extent we can be and are a culture that is firmly tied to the tree in the city park down the street from where you live, the potted geranium on your windowsill, or the Amazon rainforest, that connection with even little slivers of nature, I believe creates a kind of kinship that would play out in the future in ways that allow us to kind of insist, no, this particular behavior is not going to be tolerated because it goes against the very nature of this important kinship that has brought so much to us. And so I think whatever you do to feed and nourish kinship, whether it's with other people or whether it's with the natural world, is going to make you a little bit more alert to protecting and making decisions that are in favor of that kinship being able to grow.
And so we'll leave you with this local story. We're standing in front of the Willamette River. And so this is the Willamette River going by. It flows from south to north. And this is one of the bridges in Portland, the Fremont Bridge. And that's community, right? This is human community with natural community, all one, all one, all one. The Willamette River, 15 years ago, nobody could go near it in terms of swimming or fishing or anything. It was so polluted. And a group of people, maybe as many as 20, you can hear about this in this month's How It Looks From Here podcast. Neil Aronowitz, a design artist, speaks specifically to this story. Anyway, a group of people here in Portland got big, got loud, and got effective, and were successful in making it so that the city funded putting in what's called a really big pipe. It was the big pipe. And the big pipe is now, when the water rises and the sewage would normally have come into the Willamette, it goes into the big pipe. So that by now the balance has been returned to this river and it's safe enough to swim in. So there is, and the fish have returned, and the sea lions every now and then take a wrong turn and come up here.
And that's an important thing. I just think we need to be clear. So these people who helped affect that change didn't accept the river being polluted as that's the way it's got to be.
Right.
They accepted that this is where they were. This is what the situation was. And then from fully understanding and acknowledging and grokking that situation, get together and plan community action that allowed the change. So that's kind of where the acceptance is, and the decision making about what you can put your attention to.
Yeah. And so probably there was plenty of impulse to control.
True.
Yeah. And that's not really what saved the day. Once again, we can go back to the trees. The relationship of the trees that we're seeing here around us right now with us is not transactional. It's not saying, if we'll do this for you if you do this for us. It's not that. It's very present, as you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
And it is just kind of with disinterest, really. The trees don't care if we are grateful or if we even notice that we are they are giving so generously to us all the time.
That sounds like very much the behavior of an elder.
Yes, it does.
More on that to come.
Yes.
November 12th, we're going to have a deep dive.
Yes, we
at
are.
5 o'clock in the evening Pacific,
6 o'clock.
Right?
Yeah, 5 o'clock Pacific, 6 o'clock Mountain Time. So we do say 6 o'clock Mountain Time is when we'll be having this deep dive on the 12th of December. Join us.
12th of November, actually.
What did I say, December?
December. Yeah.
I'm ahead of myself. Yeah. And meantime, I don't know. I'm raised in the South, so I want to say bless us all as we move through these first days of November and into what the next weeks and months and years, how they unfold. Bless us always, but in particular right now. Take really good care of yourself and take care of each other. This is what we have, and this is what we can do.
I'd also say if you'd like to really dive deeply into these things in a very profoundly powerful environment. Don't forget our retreats next summer. You can go to www.fullecology.com and find these 2 retreats we're offering in the Centennial Valley, which really kind of allow us to experience, all of us, on a very deep level, what we're only putting to words now. And so I think most of us walk out of that valley with a very renewed sense of purpose and hopefulness and commitment to the things that matter to us in life. So,
and deep relationship with nature. That Centennial Valley just calls you in ways that you I mean, as much as you've spent time in the natural world, it keeps calling you in.
Yeah, it's
deeper
one of the
and
most
deeper.
beautiful places
It's
I've
really
ever been,
something.
and I have been in a lot of beautiful places.
Yeah.
And that really is up there. So
Yeah.
anyway, check it out. And
www.fullecology.com. If you haven't been there, go there. And if you're not on our mailing list, go to the bottom of the homepage and subscribe. And we will be happy to be in touch with you. Also, write us.
Yeah.
Email connect@fullecology.com. We love hearing from you. Yeah.
That should do it. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for spending this time with
Yes.
us. Take care of yourself. Take care of one another.
Yes, really. Take good care. Happy November. Happy November.
Happy November.
All right.
Bye.
Bye for now.